Welcome, Alejandro Blanco. Thank you for joining us on Verdicts Vogue. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Alejandro Blanco, I'm a trial lawyer. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I've been doing this for 40 years, the lawyer thing, for 4 years, the husband thing, and for about 21 years, the father thing.
And how many children do you have?
We have 2 girls,
What are their ages?
21 and 18.
Interesting. Are they planning to follow the footsteps and be a trial attorney as well?
I hope not. And I know that they will not do that. Although there's some rustles in the wind about a different area of law. But
Really?
that would be interesting, yes.
What area of law are you hearing little rustles?
Something called art law.
Art law.
Yes.
So my daughter does not want to be an attorney. She's only 9, but she's a planner. And she tells me that that's something, the furthest thing from her, because she is more of an art soul. So if anything, I always joke around that I'll probably end up paying for a very expensive art degree. And that's what will make her happy.
Whenever you want to talk about that reality, Rosanna and I are experiencing it. Yes.
Right now?
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, our oldest is truly engaged in the love of art and art history. She is an amazing human. Because we do brain injury, we know exactly how her testing is. And she just has an amazing ability to recognize details on artifacts that are 5,000 years old.
Oh, wow.
She's amazing, and she loves art. However, art is on itself, it doesn't pay. So she is exploring ways in which to not only excel in the world of art, but also be a leader in the provenance, meaning where are things from?
Okay.
And so there seems to be a lot of stealing in art. Happened during the German occupation of different places during World War II and so forth. I'm fascinated. I am stunned by that area, and that there's such a development in the law within that area.
Within that is fascinating. So there's a possibility that you'll have another lawyer. And then what about your younger daughter?
My younger daughter is a designer. So she wants to make sure that our world is easier for all of us.
So a designer, is she interior or is she clothing? Because my daughter is into designing. She's 9 years old. She won't know. She has the fabrics. She has the apps. She has all of that stuff. Everything does and loves it.
More of designing artifacts and tools, engineering, design engineering. Okay. Yeah.
So
but both of them are artistic in design.
Oh, nice.
The clothing and the way we live.
So tell us, for people who are watching and don't know, we met probably about 3-4 years ago in Arizona. You came to speak at our, I think, yearly Trial Lawyers Annual Association or some sponsored event. And I just was fascinated with your story of how you kind of came to be and found your voice. That's something that it's something that fascinates me, listening to people's stories, because when you know your authentic self, then you can tell other people's stories as well. Do you remember that the first, you may not remember, it may just be my memory, but do you remember anything of that?
I remember being in Arizona. I have been to a number of places. I remember talking about being prepared to present or prepared to win, I think was the topic. I think that what I talked about was finding who you are, and finding as who you are, what you can tell people. Remember, there's always an audience. There's always a group of people listening to us. And the audience becomes an extension of who we are. If you do not know, and you don't have a center and the ability to resonate from that place, contrary to what a lot of lawyers think, the audience of 12 is extremely emotionally intelligent. they can pick fakeness or falseness really fast. But when you are truly resonating from a place of self ownership, then the audience gets that, and they are intrigued and listen. I used to joke that I'm going to write eventually a book called A Journey to the Center of the Self.
Okay.
And the idea is, after you take away all the masks, after you take away everything that either yourself or others have put onto you, what's left? And that is the true self.
That's the thought of that for me is scary, because you have to be completely vulnerable to reach that true self. But at the same time, the thought is very liberating. And I think that as a young attorney, now becoming not young attorney, you start learning about putting aside what other people think, because I think a big deal is what people put onto you. So as for myself, I feel other people and it resonates with me what their thoughts. It comes to a point where you just let it all go, and just do you. And I think that's what you're talking about when you get to that point.
So yes.
And how did you get there, or have you gotten there yet?
I think I've been there for some years now. I don't think everybody likes that.
Why do you say that?
Because when you are your true self, you're different than what others people want you or expect you to be. When especially in our profession, when you are what other people want you or expect you to be, you can be guided, also known as manipulated.
True.
In a way that it makes their preferences. So when you have that own voice, you stand your ground, and not everybody likes that. But what I found out is, if you're a trial lawyer, then the audience expects you to be real. And the only way to be real is, it's not really that you're vulnerable, is that you are invincible, because nobody can deny your true nature.
It's an interesting way of thinking of it. It's still, I find it scary to get to that point where you're in front of a jury. And I know you're a trial attorney and your focus is traumatic brain injuries.
Right.
Is there one time or one that stands out to you when you're in front of a jury and you know that you're connecting, you have that feeling that they're understanding you, that synergy? Can you describe that?
Well, I talk about it as the man or the woman in the arena and the audience. What I have experienced when I'm there is some people call it a zone, mm-hmm. or a flow. The best way that I can describe it is, there's a portal that opens, and the audience, the group in front of you, they really become a mirror of who you are. And you can see everything at the same time. You can experience what this person is feeling, what that person is thinking. You can even begin to anticipate how they're going to move. I don't understand how it happens. Best way that neuroscience explains it is, you're beginning to function with both the right and the left hemisphere at the same time. So you're intaking 18 to 20,000 bits of information per second, rationally, emotionally, and so you are a complete person. But at that moment, the closeness that it is with the audience is almost palpable, and nobody dares interrupt it. And it's happened a number of times. I remember there was a moment in closing argument back in 2015 when I turned around after this space, I call it a portal that opened. I turn around to the defense lawyers and I say, "Why do you do these things, gentlemen?"
And how did that go?
It turned out into a $25 million verdict. But it was organic. It was, the best way I can describe it from a rational point of view is, a mature male or a mature female stands in the middle of the theater, and calls out those who are violating our rules and says, let's fix this. The interesting thing in that particular case that I'm talking about is in the jury, there were 8 women. And the foreperson became a 40-something-year-old lady that was a manager of a major chain of hotels. And she brushed away everything that the defense was saying because she understood that, they were trying to get away with all sorts of excuses. I just heard that said in a presentation because I used that specific word back in 2015, defense excuses, to get away with something that they shouldn't get away. It was pretty catastrophic brain injury.
And she was able to just push away those excuses.
Yes, and actually she was very nice when the lawyers, hat in hand, were asking post-verdict about, why the jury did not believe their story. She said something very, very, something to the effect that the witnesses didn't have much credibility, which was a very nice way of saying, yeah, you guys didn't.
But they were full of it?
Right.
Yeah. Wow. And so with that experience, it sounds like, when that portal opens, is there something that, because you have to recreate that, right, with every jury to be able to connect, to be able to have them understand you, understand your client's story, you're mirroring, they become a mirror of you. How is there a way or so that you can reach that every time? Is there a formula or is it just a feeling?
There is a pathway.
Okay.
And I don't think our audience is going to like what I'm going to say. Every time I hear a lawyer say, I don't believe the jury is going to believe that, I turn around and I look at the lawyer right in the eyes and it's, why don't you believe it? Because we have the ability to project onto others what our worst enemies. And we don't like in others that which we don't like about ourselves. So the process, the pathway of creating that environment is to be able to clean your own filters, figure out why it is that you don't like this particular client, what it is that you don't like this particular fact in the case. What are your own prejudices that are coloring it? And go deal with it. Clean those filters. If you can't clean those filters, you're not the lawyer for the case. Mm-hmm. But if you can, then when you access that place, it's, that quote in the Bible, when in the Old Testament, when Moses looking at the burning bush and kind of gets closer and he hears the voice saying, take your sandals off, you're standing on sacred ground. There are certain things about cases that we as tribal mammals understand are sacred ground. And when you are able to yourself go in there with the sacred reverence that it deserves, everybody else gets it. So that's a pathway to open it, to open the portal, is you are talking from a place that is sacred.
And now we all have, in all of our cases, there's bad facts. It's more than just knowing the bad facts. You're talking about taking it a step further. You're talking about taking those facts, understanding why you yourself have a disconnect, because if you don't believe it yourself, how are you going to give that message to the jury authentically?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I remember I had a case in New York where my client fell 44 feet. And there was an open stairs. The handrail was built according to a very old code, but it was still within code. It was in violation of national safety standards, but it was still within code, and it was an old building. I joke that it was in the Rye Brook area, which is where Hillary went to walk in the woods after she lost the election. But I was in that, place about a year after the election loss, and I was looking at it, and The only way that you can fall 44 feet is if you're intoxicated and you're
Interesting.
trying to slide down that banister.
Was that your bad fact?
Well, the client said he didn't remember. His wife, who was in front of him, he says, I don't think he would ever do it. But I knew he'd done it. And
Was there?
I knew that was something that if we went to trial, that it would be a bad thing. So everybody says, well, the jury will not. No, I said, we don't believe. And I had to talk. His name is Andy. I said, Andy, I got to tell you, you were sliding that, down that banister. That's how you felt. And it took a lot of work just to say, even if that's true, and he was drunk, do I have a case? Can I help him? And can't talk about it because it's confidential, but they have 3 kids in Maryland right now. They got married with Cristina. That's his wife's name. And we still stay in touch. He is impaired with rigidity, with all sorts of issues, but he's able to live the fullest life. But it took going in there with that to be able to say, you know what, if we're going to trial, we're only going to ask for a small percentage of fault because it takes 2 to tango, and he had the major contribution.
Well, you also gain credibility with a jury if you accept fault, because if you're trying to go in and say this is completely their fault, and then they find out that, oh wait, your client also contributed, it's going to hurt you. So
Right.
Going in with the strategy, you know what, my client did this, but at the same time, this case is worth this amount.
Remember a couple of minutes ago, I said the mature or man or a woman, you have to give the jury, you have to give even the defense lawyer and mediator. I mediated that in actually in the New York Times building at the Jams. I mediated that, and the judge was a defense-oriented judge. But when I did the presentation, when I told him, what the facts were, he worked towards getting that case resolved, and it did. But it was more of knowing, not a strategy,
Mm-hmm.
is can you speak with the authority of a mature member of the community saying, this is what's real, this is what's truth. And when you can, then you can win.
Wow. And I know you can't talk about it, but you are happy with the result that you were able to get for your client once that all occurred. So
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Actually, they were ecstatic. Both of them are like masters of taxation law, so they could do all the numbers for themselves.
Well, and what I know that you've had, you've also helped me on a case where you took a deposition of a well-known Arizona neurologist who he's never seen a brain injury, never seen a concussion that didn't resolve within 90 days. And you single-handedly, after that deposition that you took for me, we were able to resolve that case immediately. So,
I'm glad.
So I appreciate that. And I think we're still on that case on the other portion of it. But I know that brain injury cases is your passion, is where you focus on. Tell us about how did you get involved, or what made you want to focus on brain injury cases?
Well, I'm the son of a doctor. Dad passed away a couple of years ago.
I'm sorry.
The brother of a doctor. My sister practices medicine in Argentina. I wanted to be a doctor, and my father says, don't, you'll be at the mercy of lawyers. And so I tell every single neurologist or brain expert, I said, now I'm the mercy of doctors. But medicine comes simply to me. I mean, I grew up with it. My dad was in neuroradiology, actually in radiology, but he was also a clinician. So I like being able to discern what it is that a person has. I have a condition. It's a neurological condition, hearing loss. My grandmother gifted me that hereditary condition, to the point that I find it more difficult to enunciate that I used to when I had perfect audition. And my thing is, how does that affect a person? We can all see the diagnosis, we can all see, but then how does that affect a person? Why is it that people act so strangely after a brain injury? And, you said traumatic, but there is at least 5 different kinds of causation for brain injury: lack of oxygen, chemicals, degenerative, acquired through birth, genetics. And I was lucky enough to get into a couple of cases back in the 90s. So literally, it's been like 30 years of experience. And I've grown with the session. Things that I'm listening here today at the TBI Med Legal Conference, I was working on 20 years ago.
Really?
And now they're mainstream. And I'm glad about that. It's just fascinating. We are our brains. Feelings are brain processed. The reality that we see are imaged by the brains.
True.
So I don't know. I could spend hours and hours and hours, but I think that what is so interesting is that we don't die with so many systems in dysfunction of the brain. We continue to function in dysfunctional ways, and they are pretty systematic. People who have visual hallucinations due to traumatic brain injury, they act in a very specific way. And after a few years of doing that, you can tell that, whether they're auditory, have visual, kinesthetic hallucination. People sometimes feel that they're burning up, and it's just their brain being triggered. Imagine if you saw quadruple everything all the time. Or if, like one of my clients, if the floor is like a tape that flows, you don't know where the floor is. You don't know where to step. So you walk very tentatively.
Now, when dealing in those cases and trying to explain what your client is seeing or hearing, is there, to the jury, is there something that you do so the jury can understand what they're going through?
Well, right. Interesting. That's a topic that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. But in order to be able to explain, you have to have experienced. My first understanding of that was back in 2000 at a medical brain injury seminar, not lawyers, where the different visual therapists had the lenses, glasses.
Prisms?
Glasses that reproduced the pathological condition.
Really? So not
so you put on you would be sitting on the audience, and some lawyer would put glasses, and they would tilt their head like this, and they walk like this, or they would do all sorts of very behaviorally weird stuff until you put on the glasses. And you put on the glasses, and if your head was straight, the world was upside down. So you had to turn like this for the world to be horizontal again.
Interesting. So it's the opposite of because I've seen the prism glasses, how they fix, and seen the before and the after. So this is
the
more
prism glasses bring it back to this, so they don't have to compensate with the behavior.
Sure.
Right? If you lose the central vision due to brain injury or damage to the optic nerve as a result of brain injury, you cannot see detail. You see movement and you see blurriness, but you cannot see detail. If you lose peripheral vision, you can't see this microphone. I would be hitting it constantly because of neglect. It's fascinating how much work.
Are you using technology or new methods to show the jury? So, for instance, tinnitus. If you go online and try to hear the different sounds that someone with tinnitus has, that you can play it to the jury. or those types of glasses, or do you use that when you're presenting to the jury?
The challenge is no two brain injuries are the same.
Sure.
So you can't adopt a generic because it would not be representative of a condition. But once you know what the condition is, then yes, you can have a computer graphics person code the specific condition. I'll be showing some of them tomorrow in terms of double vision, in terms of hallucinations. Picture this: I had a client, a court reporter, a massive brain injury because she head-on collision at 60 miles an hour with another car going 80 miles an hour, so 140 miles, and her airbag did not deploy. So she literally fractured the jaw. And so she says she had recovered. She would be at a deposition, and a person would walk out of the wall, go through the table with all the lawyers, walk out of the window, and then disappear in ether. And she just kept on typing because she didn't want anybody to know that she was insane.
Oh.
She was having a visual hallucination triggered by the damage in the brain that she had. So those are fun things, right?
But it depends how you define fun, but yes.
Well, I think what's the most important is a person continues to live and continues to function with all of these dysfunctions. The question is, what is the impact in their lives?
Absolutely.
Most of us don't want to talk to anybody about this because then we're crazy. Because of my hearing disability, I can tell you what my tinnitus sounds like. I can make the sound. So that's what I do with my clients. I ask them, what does the sound make the sound? Actually, John, his last name will come, Ilya and I tried a case in Arizona, an 8-mile-an-hour case, and the result was $1 million on an auditory dysfunction. The case still going in certain areas, but the jury came back with $1 million just because of the dysfunction, and it was the sound of a typewriter constantly.
The old typewriters.
The old typewriters constantly, the tack, 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 tack.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, because I asked our client to make the sound and she wouldn't do it. She said, no, because it triggers me. So I did it like that, and she lost it because I had just amplified what she can hear all the time. Another thing is, you can't shut it off. Our brains, are able to shut, the sounds off. But if you have a brain injury, you cannot. You have what's called hyperacusia, where even little rustles, you hear like they're screaming at you. And these fake sounds or phantom sounds, hallucinations, are overwhelming.
And they live with this. And this is, and it's powerful when you put it in those words. It really is. Because say there's for me, one of the most awful sounds is a hairdryer. I can't handle a hairdryer sound for too long, but I can turn it off. Now you have someone who has an auditory issue. They can never turn it off. They wake up with it. They go to sleep with it. And it's something that's, most people don't understand it until you make them, until you show it to them, right? Because, and that's kind of the big thing. So now tomorrow you'll be speaking at TBI Med Legal here in San Diego.
Yes.
And what is your topic?
Psychiatric issues. They call it psych, the stranger in their lives. And what I've taken is that part will have medical doctors and neuropsychologists, psychologists, but I'm going to take that part and talk about beyond the basics. How do you get the impact of the value of that on a human being? How do you measure if somebody's having visual hallucinations or disturbances, post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic pain?
Sure.
And they have to be a full-time mom.
Well, what would be the answer?
They commit suicide. The normal human being will withdraw, will reduce the circle of activity, until it becomes manageable. One of my expert ones testified that brain injuries or brain damage, living with brain damage doesn't get better. It just get easier. And I asked him how. He says, well, people avoid the activities that challenge them. And so they reduce their number of activities until literally they may be living in their home or in a room.
And that's very common with brain injured clients, especially, I mean, because most of the brain injury clients that we deal with, they look like they did before, but to their family members, they're different and they don't know why. I mean, divorce is rampant after a brain injury. The strain if they can work in employment, the friends, family, they completely become a hermit. They retreat and they just I hear it all the time. I spend time in my room, or I'm just by myself, or I don't do this anymore.
In darkness. There's another light really bothers them. Sounds bother them. But I asked my expert are you saying that we just get used to living the life of a brain damaged person? And he said, yeah, that's what it is. So my question that I have often for the jury is, what is it worth to live the life of a brain damaged person?
Now, do you think that it depends? It depends on what the life of that person was like before.
Yes.
Is that something that you bring into your cases to show what your client's life was prior to the injury?
I asked, after obviously we have evidence as to whatever the person used to do, I asked the jury, imagine, what if one day there was Miss Smith had a dream that none of this happened, that they didn't run a red light, or they didn't push that crane through the wall, and that now, and I just describe a normal day in their lives, that the way it used to be. Johnny comes home from work, Mary comes and says, Mom, I got admitted to the community college or UCLA, whatever the truth is, and they said, okay, we're going to celebrate. And then as the day begins to dawn and Mary wakes up, she goes, oh, it was just a dream. What is that worth? What is that dream worth for one day, or 1 week, or 1 year? I have yet to tell people, to have people tell me it's worthless, because the life that is compared to the life that could have been is a very strong indicator of human value.
Wow. And it's so powerful because the work that you do, helping these people, providing them a voice, telling their story, being the advocate that's for most that can advocate for themselves, you create an impact for them and their family. Whether, I mean, there's no money in the world that they would probably give if they could have their old life back, but you at least try to lessen the harm that has been created so they could have a decent life. You bring justice for them.
I don't think you're going to like what I'm going to say, but
try me.
I'm going to...
It wouldn't be the first time, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time.
Right. Well, I remember you and I have a little bit of a disagreement the first time we met.
I know.
I'm sure Hope remembers it too, because...
Hope, were you there that day? Oh, she was.
It was loud enough.
I was hoping that you forgot about that, but okay.
You know. Life is a terminal illness. There's absolutely no way that we survive this illness called life. However, we have tools to cope, and we, at times, given discipline, given the tools, how we use our talents, our tools, we enjoy, this journey. What I ask my juries to do is to give our clients, one of us that got hurt and damaged through the negligence and the neglect of others, to give them the tools so that they can have dignity in their lives. Because I have a disability. I don't think I have a disability because, it was gradual, but I come to terms with the fact that I cannot hear as good as you do or as well as Rosanna does. But at least with my hearing aids that I can afford, given our profession, I have the dignity of being able to struggle and ask for help. If I have somebody who is beyond 9 feet and they say something and I cannot hear, I said, I'm sorry, I have a disability. Can you repeat what you just said? And whether that is exposing a vulnerability or just being real, what it gives me is the ability to have dignity in my struggles. That's all I want from my client. And the recognition that their worth, the life that could have been, is worth something. I mean, imagine being told that the life that could have been is worth less, that all you have the right to is the medical treatment that Medicare would approve for your brain injury, which, by the way, is zero. There is no treatment for Medicare for traumatic brain injury, because you, as a human being, are worthless. You are not worth anything other than your medical bills. And yet, time and time again, our juries are going,
Of course.
just because they think that we lawyers are greedy. Truth is, we are greedy, but what are we greedy for?
Sure.
Right? So it's not that I deliver justice. I give our clients the tools so that they can fight with dignity. And I think that is the most human thing that we can do for anybody. And Andy, the guy that fell from the thing, he's fighting. He's investing. I think he lost a lot in the market these days.
I think we all have.
But that's like anybody one of us.
Sure.
And as long as you can live your life under the terms that you are now dealt with and have the dignity to call your own shots, I think that's as good as we can do. If we can call that justice, I'm glad with it.
I would call it justice. You've said it beautifully. And I agree with you. We're not going to disagree about that one.
Good.
So now, what is next? I know you've been working on Camp Lejeune cases and been doing a fantastic job. Where do you see yourself, or where do you want to see yourself in the next 5 years?
Retired.
Really?
No.
I don't see you as someone who would be retired, because you love this so much.
I have had the honor to be asked to be in what's called a portion of leadership in the Camp Lejeune litigation. I think is one of the most worthwhile litigations in our history. And I am concentrating, of course, on brain and specifically on the effects on Parkinson's. So I see that there is a rough estimate that there is about 25,000 to 30,000 Parkinson's cases over the years, arising out of the contamination of two, maybe more, but that we know of, two compounds in the water at Camp Lejeune. There's 500,000 claims that have been filed. If we can present the information which the DOJ is contesting to the point where we have a causation connection between these chemicals and Parkinson's, and of all the injuries to the brain, Parkinson's has to be one of the most devastating. There is something called Parkinson's dementia, which is completely separate and apart from all other dementias. People have hallucinations. They become paranoid, angry at families. They are physically violent with the families when they have. So it's horrible. How do you provide for it? How do you help these men and women and literally civilians that were there unwittingly? But our Marines, they were willing to give our lives so that you and I could be free. and how do we take care of them, and how do we help them? Um, I can tell you story after story of folks that we've interviewed. These are the best generation that America produced, in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 60s. And somehow, somewhere, we don't have the courage as a nation to say, yes, we owe you a debt, what it is that we need to. So we'll have to persuade the judges. Hopefully, if the law changes, the juries. But we'll see where we are. I can't really talk too much because there are confidentiality issues, but sure. It's an amazing project. And as long as I can hear, and as long as I can stand, I will continue to work on brain injury cases, because I think that is the best thing. I wish there were more people interested in actually learning all the nuances, but it's a lot of work.
Well, before I thank you for being here. What I've been doing is I've been asking some fun questions.
Okay.
So I want to ask you 3 questions.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Nothing hard. I know. Brace
Here,
yourself.
let me brace myself.
Brace yourself.
All right.
Okay. So first question is, if you could give any piece of advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Don't trust too much what other people tell you should do. And I'm going to quote Daryl Isaacs, who I just heard is a good friend. Trust your instincts, but don't wholly rely upon them. Blaze your own trails. Whatever your thoughts are in terms of spirituality, the divinity gave each one of us a combination of talents. And I'll quote my wife on this, Rosanna, who says, the best thing we can do is take those talents and improve them, work them in until in the field that we choose, we are not, if not the best, we are among the best. And then follow your passion.
Okay.
That's what I would say, if you're a lawyer.
Okay. It's very wise.
She is.
I've had the pleasure of meeting her today. Number 2, what is the greatest accomplishment, whether professional or personal, that you have had to date? You can only pick one.
Marrying Rosanna and raising our 2 daughters.
And last question. If you were able to choose one meal, it doesn't matter the location, the distance, but you had the choice of one, what would that be?
Meal?
Meal. This one's a little bit hard because if you're anything like me, I like a lot of different things.
There's this bread made out of yucca. Of course, Rosanna makes it all the time. Typical of the northeast of Argentina, called chipa.
Chipa?
Chipa. It is a Guarani word for bread. That would be
your meal.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you eat it plain, or freshly baked, or
freshly baked? Yeah.
Okay. I'm also a bread person too, so I appreciate that. I really do. Well, Alejandro, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to sit with me and talk to me. I really appreciate it, and for all of our guests, thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is fun, and I truly appreciate being asked.